This is Lesson 10. In this lesson, we'll explore the basics of creating button symbols inside of your Flash movie. Buttons are one of three distinct symbol types that we can create, and they're especially useful if you're trying to give your user control over your movie. This could be stopping or playing an animation on the timeline. This could be navigating to other parts of your movie or sending them to a different website altogether. In any case, buttons are the most direct way to give your users some type of tactile control that they can work with on the stage. Let's get started by going ahead and opening up the fl1101_video.fla lesson file. If we take a look at the stage, we'll see we have some basic graphics to start off with. If you use your selection tool and just click on the circle in the middle of the stage, over on the property inspector, you'll see this is just a basic drawing object. Now, creating a button symbol is pretty much as straightforward as creating a graphic or a movie clip symbol. We can take graphics on the stage and convert them to that symbol type. To get started, make sure those graphics are selected on the stage, and let's go ahead and choose Modify, Convert to Symbol. From here, we get the Convert to Symbol dialog box, and what we're going to first do is give our new button a name. So let's call this Red Button. Now, under the type, what we want to do is we want to select the button type. This is going to be a new button symbol. Let's go ahead and click OK to create the new button symbol. Now, if we go over to the property inspector, we'll see that this reads that we have an instance of red button, and it shows us the distinctive icon that says that this is a button symbol. Now, once we create a button, we can pretty much start using it right away, but the thing that makes a button distinctive is the fact that we can actually change its appearance as our user works with it with their mouse. Let's go ahead and do that by, first of all, double-clicking on the new button to edit it in place on the stage. So let's go ahead and double-click that button. And what we'll see here is that it shows us that we're inside the button editing it at the top left edge of the stage. Now, if we look down the timeline panel, we'll see that a button's timeline is actually pretty distinctive from any other timeline we've seen so far. It has 4 distinctly labeled frames called up, over, down, and hit. This is because a button is designed to work with a user's mouse. So these 4 frames represent the different states of appearance that our button can have. The up frame is what our button looks like when the button is up or not being either pressed or rolled over. So that's what you're going to see most of the time until you actually start working with the button. The over frame is what our button looks like when the mouse pointer or cursor rolls over it. Think of it as the rollover state. The down frame represents the graphics that will appear when you click and hold down your mouse on a button. The hit frame actually doesn't represent anything we can see, but it represents the clickable area of the button. First thing we want to do is we want to create the graphics for our other visual states, over and down. So go ahead and click and select the over frame on the one layer that we have. And to create a new keyframe here, we're going to press the F6 shortcut key. And what this does is this duplicates the graphics from the previous keyframe, which is up, onto the over frame. Now what we're going to do is to make this look somewhat distinctive, we're going to change something about the button. So it's very obvious that we've rolled over it when our user works with it. So let's go ahead and on the stage just click once on that drawing object. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go over to the fill, which is this color swatch here with the bucket next to it. And we're going to click on that to open up the color picker. And from here, what you're going to do is go ahead and select that green to black radial gradient. It's one of the presets that appears in the swatches panel here. And let's go ahead and select that. So now on this particular state, the button turns green. Go back to the timeline and click on the timeline ruler where it says up, and you'll see it goes back to the first frame, which is our up state. And if we click black, and if we click back on over, we'll see that the button turns green. So now what does this exactly mean for our end user? Well, let's go ahead and preview our movie and actually see how our button behaves. Let's go up to the control menu, choose Test Movie, Test. So this opens up our movie as a preview in the Flash player, and watch what happens now when you move your cursor over the button. You get this hand cursor. Now what we next need to do is actually design the down state. Go ahead and close this preview, and let's return back to the timeline panel, and just like we did with the over frame, let's go ahead and click on the down frame. And once again, let's use that F6 shortcut key to create a new keyframe on this. Now we've duplicated the graphics from the over keyframe, but again, we want to make this distinctive from the other 2 frames, up and over. So we're going to change something about our graphics here. So just like we did for the over keyframe, let's go ahead and click and select once on the drawing object to make sure that its properties show up in the property inspector. And just like we did before, let's go ahead and click on the fill color swatch. And from the swatches that appear here, let's go ahead and choose the blue to black radial gradient. Lo and behold, that actually fills our button with that specific color. So now as we go through the different states of our button, we'll see that we get red, green, and blue. Now design-wise, this may not fit exactly with what you're going to do most of the time. Let's go ahead and test this once more by going to Control, Test Movie, Test. And if we now roll over our button, we get that same green color that we set for the over state. But if we click and hold down our mouse button, we'll see now that the button turns blue. So that's pretty cool. We've got 3 different things that go on here. Now, one thing you'll notice is if this was a smaller button, this is actually fairly big. But watch what happens here as we move right off the graphics. So right here on the edge of the stroke, as I move, you'll see that I can no longer click it. And that makes sense. You figure that, well, the only clickable area of the button is going to be where the graphics are, and you're right. Let's go ahead and close our preview window, and let's return back to the hit state. Now, the hit state we actually never see. It doesn't appear at any specific point when we work with the mouse or otherwise. What the hit state does control, though, is for the overall button, it determines how much of the button area is clickable. We can add graphics to the hit state that will determine how much of the button is clickable, and we could add basically anything to the hit state. Generally, it's recommended you add something that's either the same shape or is a much more basic shape, so that if you have a complex shaped button that users can click around it fairly easily. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on the hit frame, and once again we're going to use that F6 shortcut key to duplicate the stuff from the down frame. Now the only thing we're going to do differently this time is we're going to actually take these graphics and we're going to make them slightly bigger using the free transform tool. Let's go over to our tools panel and let's grab that free transform tool. Now, one thing we're going to do is we want to make sure that we don't resize this off to one corner or the other. We'll try and resize it uniformly from the center. Easiest way to do this is to hold down the Shift and the Option keys at the same time. And we're going to click and drag just slightly like this until we get the shape slightly bigger than the original. Now, keep in mind your user is never going to see this. However, the actual tangible area of this, the filled area of this graphic, is going to set how much of the overall button is clickable. Let's see actually how this works by once again testing our button. Let's go up to Control and choose Test Movie, Test. Now watch what happens here. If you watch cursor carefully, watch as I get close, but not exactly on the button. You'll see that the hand appears and that the button gets activated. And this is actually a pretty good practice because it allows you to make buttons easier to work with. And that's, again, especially true if your buttons have some type of odd shape or they're very, very small. Now, keep in mind that you can omit the hit frame. If you omit the hit frame, what Flash will do is it'll actually use the last available frame's worth of graphics. In other words, in this case, before we created the hit frame, it used whatever graphics were on the down frame to set the clickable area. So it's always recommended practice to create some graphics on the hit frame, even if you think it's unnecessary, and even if the graphics are the same size. But again, we get the basics now, and we see exactly what makes a button symbol distinctive. And what's nice is that it's very easy to create controls in Go. And with a little bit of ActionScript, you can actually bring your movies to life and give your user a little bit more control at the same time.